I woke up and looked at the wall. It was white and cold. My room was quiet. I did not want to get up, but I had to. I had work. I had to make breakfast. I had to clean. I had to smile. Every day was the same. My husband Brian was still sleeping. He always slept late. I walked to the kitchen and made tea. I did not make tea for him. He did not like my tea anymore. He told me last week, "Don't make tea for me. I don't want it." So now I only made tea for myself. I sat at the table and drank slowly. I looked outside the window. It was cloudy. I saw a bird on the wall. It flew away. I thought, I wish I could fly away too. I met Brian 5 years ago. He was different then. He smiled at me. He called me every day. He brought small gifts. He asked me how I felt. He said I made him happy. I believed him. We got married after 1 year. At first I was happy. He held my hand. He cooked dinner with me. He made me laugh. I thought, this is love. This is life. But after some time, he changed. He stopped asking me things. He stopped saying kind words. He started coming home late. He looked at his phone all the time. He did not talk. He did not look at me. I tried to speak with him. I asked, "Is everything okay?" He said, "I'm tired." I asked again, "Do you want to talk?" He said, "Not now." He always said, "Not now." One day, I made pasta for dinner. It was hot and fresh. I waited for him. He came home at 9. He looked at the food and said, "I ate already." Then he went to the bedroom. He did not say thank you. He did not ask how my day was. I ate alone that night. Another day, I wore a green dress. I brushed my hair. I wanted to look nice. I waited by the door. When he came in, he looked at me and said nothing. I said, "Hi." He said, "Where is dinner?" I felt like I was not a wife. I was only a worker in the house. I cleaned, I cooked, I washed clothes. But I did not feel loved. I felt empty. Sometimes I looked in the mirror. I did not know the woman I saw. She looked tired. Her eyes were sad. Her mouth did not smile. I touched my face and asked, "Where did I go?" One night, Brian came home late again. I asked him, "Where were you?" He said, "Don't ask me that." I said, "I was worried." He said, "I can take care of myself." I felt pain in my chest. I said, "Do you still love me?" He looked at me and said, "Why do you always need to ask that?" Then he walked away. I cried that night. I did not cry loud. I was quiet. I did not want him to hear me. I held my pillow and cried into it. My tears were hot. The next day I went to work. I was slow. My body was tired. My heart was heavy. My friend Carol looked at me and said, "You don't look well." I said, "I'm just tired." But it was not just tired. I was broken inside. Carol said, "You work too much. You need rest." I smiled. I did not tell her the truth. I did not want people to know. I wanted to hide my pain. That week, Brian forgot my birthday. He did not say anything. He did not buy a gift. He did not even say, "Happy birthday." I made a small cake for myself. I ate it alone in the kitchen. I felt like I was not a person. I was just someone who lived in his house. I started thinking about my life. I thought about my dreams. When I was young, I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to feel free. But now, I was just stuck. I was quiet. I was small. One Sunday, I went to the park. I sat on a bench. The sun was out. The trees moved in the wind. A little girl ran past me, laughing. I watched her. I smiled for the first time in days. An old woman sat next to me. She looked at me and said, "You look sad." I said, "I am." She said, "You are too young to be this sad." Then she stood up and walked away. That night, I could not sleep. I looked at the ceiling and thought, I need to leave. My heart beat fast. My hands were cold, but I knew it was time. I had no love in this house. I had no joy. I had no peace. I had a cousin in Canada. Her name was Jenna. I sent her a message. I said, "Can I stay with you for some time?" She replied, "Yes. Come." I did not tell Brian that night. I waited 3 days. Then I said, "I am leaving." He laughed and said, "Where will you go?" I said, "To Canada." He said, "You are not strong enough to do that." I said, "Watch me." I packed my clothes. I took my passport. I booked my flight. I did not cry. I felt strong. I felt ready. At the airport, I sat by the window. The plane was waiting. I looked at the sky. It was blue. I said to myself, this is the first day of my new life. I did not know what would happen next. I had no job. I had little money. But I had something new. I had hope. Brian did not call. He did not send a message. But I did not care. I did not want his words. I did not want his silence. I wanted peace. I wanted to feel alive again. I wanted to find the woman I lost, the woman who laughed, the woman who dreamed. I was scared, but I was also brave. I was alone, but I was free. I was ready to begin again. Before I continue my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? Sometimes I wonder if someone out there really understands me. Just knowing you're here gives me strength. The plane was cold and quiet. I looked out the window. I saw clouds. I saw the sky. I felt small. I felt scared. But I did not stop. I was going to a new place. I was going to start again. When I landed in Canada, I felt the cold air on my face. It was winter. The wind touched my skin. I pulled my coat close. I walked slowly and looked around. Everything was new. The signs, the people, the buildings. I was far from home. Jenna stood near the gate. She held a small sign with my name. When she saw me, she smiled. She gave me a big hug. "You're really here," she said. I smiled too. "Yes, I made it." Jenna lived in a small flat. It had one bedroom and a sofa in the living room. "You can sleep here," she said. "It's not big, but it's safe." I thanked her. That night I sat on the sofa and looked at the wall. It was quiet, but not like before. This quiet was soft. It did not hurt. In the morning, Jenna made toast and tea. We sat together and talked. She asked, "Why did you leave?" I told her, "I had no more love, no more joy." She said, "I'm proud of you." I smiled, but inside, I still felt broken. Jenna worked at a local school. She helped children with reading. She left early every day. I stayed home. I cleaned her flat. I made food. I took small walks in the street. I watched the snow fall. I breathed in the cold air. I felt free. But I also felt alone. One day, Jenna came home with a small bag of bread. She said, "Let's go to the park." We walked in the snow. It was soft under our shoes. She gave some bread to a small boy on a bench. He smiled. She smiled back. I watched them. I missed smiling like that. She asked me, "Do you want to find work?" I said, "Yes, but I don't know where to start." She said, "There is a small school near here. They need someone to help in the lunchroom. It's not hard. Just simple work." I said, "I can do that." The next day, I went with her to the school. The woman there was kind. She said, "Can you help serve food and clean tables?" I said, "Yes." She smiled. "You can start next week." I walked home that day with new steps. My heart was not heavy. I had a small job. I had something to do. I was not just waiting. I was moving. The school was small. The children were loud but sweet. Some said thank you. Some just smiled. I wore an apron. I served food. I cleaned trays. I wiped tables. My feet hurt, but my heart felt light. One afternoon, a girl dropped her juice. She looked scared. I bent down and said, "It's okay." I cleaned it up. She said, "Thank you." That small word stayed in my heart all day. Each day, I walked to work. It was cold, but I did not mind. I looked at the sky. I watched people. I listened to the sound of my own shoes. I did not miss Brian. Not his voice. Not his silence. Not his house. Nothing. One weekend, Jenna and I went to a shop. We needed fruit and milk. At the shop, I saw a man drop his bag. Apples rolled on the floor. I helped him pick them up. He said, "Thank you." I smiled. "You're welcome." His name was Daniel. He was not tall. He was not loud. He was just kind. He asked me where I was from. I told him. We talked for 5 minutes. Then he said, "Maybe we can have coffee one day." I said, "Okay." That week, I thought about him, just a little. I smiled when I remembered the apples. I smiled when I thought about the coffee. We met at a small cafe on Sunday. He was already there when I arrived. He stood up and said, "Hi." I sat down. We talked. He asked about my work. I asked about his. He was a driver. He said, "I like the road. I like quiet music." I said, "I like quiet too." We smiled. We met again the next week, and the week after that. Slowly, I felt warm again. Not fast. Not big. Just warm. One evening I told him, "I came from a hard life." He said, "You don't have to tell me. But if you want, I will listen." I looked at his face. It was soft. I said, "I left my husband. He didn't love me." Daniel said, "You are brave." I felt tears in my eyes, but I didn't cry. I just said, "Thank you." Time passed. I worked at the school. I talked to Jenna. I saw Daniel. Life was not perfect. I still missed home sometimes. I still had bad dreams, but I was stronger. One morning, I looked in the mirror. My hair was a little messy, but my eyes were bright. I smiled at myself. I said, "You're back." That day, I walked to work with music in my ears. I watched a bird fly over the trees. I thought, this is my life now. I did not run. I did not hide. I was here, and I was okay. That evening, Daniel brought me flowers. He said, "Just because." I held them close. I said, "No one gave me flowers in a long time." He said, "You deserve more than flowers." I did not answer, but I smiled again. A real smile. At night, I sat on the sofa with Jenna. We watched a movie. She looked at me and said, "You're different now." I said, "Yes, I feel different." She said, "You are strong." I said, "I had to be." She held my hand. "I'm glad you came here." I looked at her. Me too. Spring came slowly. The snow melted. Small flowers grew beside the road. The sun stayed longer in the sky. I walked to work with light in my heart. I felt something new. It was not fear. It was peace. The children at the school were louder now. They played outside during lunch. They smiled and laughed. Some called my name. "Miss Nina, look at my drawing." I smiled back. Their small voices made me feel warm inside. I cleaned tables, served food, and watched them grow. It was simple, but it gave me joy. Jenna told me, "You smile more now." I looked in the mirror that night. She was right. My eyes looked calm. My lips turned up again. I saw a small light in my face. I said to myself, "You are still here. You are coming back." Daniel still came to see me. We walked in the park on weekends. Sometimes we sat near the water. We did not talk much, but the silence felt good. He brought me tea or flowers, not because it was a special day, just because he wanted to. That was new for me. No one did that before. I was not used to it. One day he said, "You look happy today." I said, "I think I am." He said, "I'm glad." I smiled, and for a moment I felt full again. Then, one afternoon, I saw a message on my phone. It was from Brian. "Do you miss me yet?" it said. I looked at the screen. I did not feel pain. I did not feel angry. I felt nothing. I put the phone down. I did not answer. The next day, another message came. "You think you're strong, but you're not." I did not reply. The third message came later that week. "I want to talk." I showed Jenna. She asked, "Do you want to talk to him?" I said, "No." There is nothing left to say. She said, "Then block him." So I did. It felt like closing a door, a heavy door that needed to stay shut. Days passed. I went to work. I came home. I met Daniel in the park. Life was slow but good. Sometimes I remembered the old days, but they felt far away, like a dream I no longer believed. Daniel brought yellow flowers one evening. He smiled and said, "These reminded me of you." I looked at the flowers and said, "No one brought me flowers before. Not like this." He said, "You deserve more than flowers." I did not know what to say, so I smiled. At night, I sat with Jenna. We watched a film and ate popcorn. She looked at me and said, "You are strong now." I said, "I had no choice. I had to be strong." She took my hand and said, "You are also soft. That is not a bad thing." I looked at her. "Soft can be strong too." She nodded. One Saturday, Daniel and I went to the lake. The sky was orange. The water was still. We sat close, but not too close. He looked at me. His voice was quiet. He asked, "Can I ask something?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you want to build something new with me?" I looked at the lake. I thought about my old life, the cold mornings, the empty dinners, the silence. I thought about now, the warm tea, the soft walks, the smiles. I turned to Daniel. I said, "I'm not broken, but I'm still healing." He said, "You don't need to be perfect. I just want to walk with you." I said, "Yes, we can try." That night, I lay in bed and thought about everything. I came here with only a suitcase. I had no plan. I had no map. But I had made a new home. I had work. I had peace. I had someone who saw me, someone who listened, someone who stayed. I looked out the window. The stars were bright. The world was wide. My chest felt warm. I was not small anymore. I was not afraid. I had left behind the pain. I had walked through fear. I had found myself again. In the morning, I opened the window. Birds were singing. I made tea and smiled.